All right, this can be the chapter 3, learning target number 1. So you should all have your notes out, following along, writing what I write. You should always write what I write, okay? So we have, in 5th grade, you learned, I'll get back to this in a minute, you learned about mixed numbers, you learned about improper fractions, how they can become, just a quick little review of that. If I have 2 1/3, I can turn that into an improper by simply doing around the barn. That's when you multiply the denominator by the whole, so 3 times 2, and then you add on your 1. So around the barn, as we practiced the other day, that is going to give me 7/3. Okay, they're the exact same thing. Okay, so now what we're going to do is convert that back to an improper by doing 7 divided by 3, and then remember you say 3 goes into 7 2 whole times, multiply around, we get 1. That becomes the numerator. That little R1 that you guys learned in elementary school, that becomes the numerator out of 3. So you can see I just went from 2 1/3 to 7/3 back to 2 1/3. So that's 5th grade. And then also in 5th grade, you learned how to add fractions. You learned how to do that. By the way, you don't have to be writing any of this. I know you probably are, and you're probably mad at me, but I'm sorry. You don't have to write this. Okay? If you were adding, that's supposed to be an addition sign. You would have to have a common denominator and all that. Okay, so that's something that you have to, you know how to do. We've worked on that through review sheets. Same with subtraction. But the one thing that and again, you don't have to write this either. The one thing I've really been hammering into you is one thing I really want to do this starting in 6th grade might be a little different than you learned last year. It doesn't matter whether you are going to be adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. Okay, you're going to do all that in this chapter, all 4 of those operations. And it doesn't matter whether you're doing any of those 4. The first step we're always going to do is we're going to go around the barn, and we are going to completely make those into improper fractions. Doesn't matter whether you're adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. That's what I want you guys to get out of this. So we just need to get into a good habit of doing this. Okay? So with that said, let's go ahead and flip over to the next page. You should all be on page 4, I believe. No, page 5. Okay? Right here. Yep, page 5. Okay? Should look just like this at the top. Okay, and here's your target for learning target 1. Now that's a pretty big target, so that's why this might be, we'll see how it goes, but it might be multiple days. But it's not that it's hard, it's just that it's new. Okay, and the target is I can compute, which means just calculator find. You can't use a calculator this chapter, but you're going to be able to find the quotients. Now what is a quotient, real quick? It's the answer to a division problem, right? So we're going to be dividing mixed numbers, which an example of those would be like 2 1/2. Fractions, that can be a 2/3, or it could be an improper fraction, like 3/2. And then we're going to be doing whole numbers, so 5 or 6, something like that. So we're just going to learn how to divide all these numbers. Now, the really, really cool thing about this is it doesn't matter. The process isn't going to change. It doesn't matter whether you're dividing a mixed number by a whole number or a whole number by a fraction. That's irrelevant. That won't matter at all. It's going to be the same process all the way through. And that's what I want you to really get out of this, is that it's going to be the same process. So we put it into one target because of that. Okay? So first of all, there's again the objective there. Here's some keywords you got to know. Okay? You got to know the word improper fraction, which we already do know. It's when the numerator is bigger than the denominator, and we know that all of these are always going to be greater than 1. All improper fractions are always going to be greater than 1. Okay? Mixed numbers, we know those are when you have a whole number and then you have the fraction part beside it. Okay? And remember, mixed numbers and impropers can become one another. Okay? Now, this word right here that probably nobody in the room knows how to say, okay? Nobody knows what that word is, but the word is, I'll spell it out here for you because it's kind of hard to read over there. Reciprocals. Now, that word is going to be a hard one for you guys to get. You guys are probably going to say something like that R word. You're probably going to say things like that. But we do need to know this word. It's a very important word, okay, when you're talking about division. Okay? So reciprocals, that's how you say it. Reciprocals. Okay? So what a reciprocal is, this is the definition, and I want everybody to put a big box around this definition right there. Put a definition around it, put a star beside it. That is going to be on your test. We've got to know what that definition is. Okay, we've got to understand what the definition is. I'm not a big time definition guy, but we've got to understand what reciprocals are. I think that's important. Okay, and basically, they are any two numbers with a product of 1. Okay, any two numbers that have a product of 1. Now, hopefully you all remember, a product is the answer to a multiplication problem. So it's weird because if I asked you guys what's the only way to multiply to get to 1, you would all probably tell me 1 times 1, right? That's the only way to do it. And then you look through the multiplication chart and you say, well, 1's not on there except for right there. So if I'm going to multiply two numbers together, the only way I'm going to get a quotient of 1 is by doing 1 times 1. Well, that's where those are the only whole numbers. Okay? So we need to go a little farther with this. So I'll show you. This is going to make perfect sense. Now, I'm going to start with two numbers here. And I would like you to write this down here at the bottom. Here I have 2/9 and 9/2. Real quick, just think about, what do you see with those two numbers? Like what's the thing that what identification are you making with those two? You're probably all saying something along the lines of, well, it's just upside down, or they just switched places. The 9 went to the top, the 2 went to the bottom. Okay? These are reciprocals of one another. They are absolutely reciprocals of one another. Okay? So when I try to look at this number, some of you are always going to say, oh, you just flip it. That's how you get the reciprocal. Now that is true, but we've got to understand why. And here's why. We'll go back to that definition. Any two numbers with a product of 1. So product means if I multiply these two numbers, if they're truly reciprocals, then they must equal 1 when I multiply them. Remember when we multiply fractions, we do top times top, then we do bottom times bottom. That's going to give me 18/18. Whenever you have a fraction that is the same number out of itself, we know that always equals 1. Because basically that's saying 18 divided by 18, and I knew it was division because all fractions are division problems, and that equals 1. Any number divided by itself is going to give you 1. Let's do another one. Okay, we'll do 3/4. Hopefully you all can say, oh, the reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3. Okay, good job. You're recognizing that it is just a flipped number, but we don't like to use that word flipped. Let's multiply them to really check that reasoning. So 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 3 is 12. Once again, we got the same number over itself. That gives us 1. And this is going to work no matter what two numbers you select. I could do 81/82 and 1/2, something like that. When I do that and I multiply them, whoops, 1/2, that ain't going to work. I meant 82/81, okay? We could multiply those. Think about it. It's going to give us, I'm not going to multiply it out, but 81 times 82 is going to give us some number. It's going to be the exact same as 82 times 81. Remember, multiplication is commutative, which means 3 times 4 is the same as 4 times 3. So all you're doing is you're flip-flopping the order in which you multiply. Okay? So reciprocals will always be able to be multiplied together to get a product of 1. Okay? That's first thing. Now, looking up here, you can see that 1/2 is your number. The reciprocal of 1/2, well, that would be 2. Remember how to make all whole numbers into fractions? You just put a 1 underneath of it. There you go. If I multiply those out, I'm going to get 2/2, which equals 1, right? Down here, 2/3, we know that's going to have to be multiplied by 3/2. 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 2 is 6. 6/6 equals 1. Okay, so the reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. So it is just flipped, but it's the meaning of it's really what I want you guys to get out of this. So let's look at some more definitions, and I'll make a Quizlet this chapter so that you guys will have, because I just think that these words are very, very key. You do have to know these 100%. An algorithm. Algorithm. You guys might have heard that word before. An algorithm is a step-by-step process to solve a problem. For instance, when you add fractions, 2/3 plus 5/8, when you add fractions, the algorithm is that, we have to find a common denominator. We have to do whatever we did to the bottom, we have to do to the top. Then we got to add the numerators. Then we have to keep our denominator the same, and so on. That is just a step-by-step process. Okay? Well, we're going to learn a new algorithm this chapter, and that's going to be the algorithm, the step-by-step process that teaches us how to divide fractions, mixed numbers, and whole numbers. Okay? The divisor. The divisor is the number you are dividing by in a division problem. The dividend is the number that's being divided or being split. Okay? For instance, if I did 33 divided by 11, this right here, 33, is the dividend. That's the whole. I want you all to write that word whole. It's what's being divided up, being cut up or split up. Okay? The divisor is the part. That is the one doing the dividing. Okay? For instance, if I wanted to take 100 Skittles and I want to divide it by the 25 students in my classroom, okay, that's going to give me 4. 100 divided by 25. This number right here is what's actually being divided up. This is representing the amount of people or the amount of groups in my room. This number over here is representing the amount of Skittles that each of my students are going to get. Okay, so you do need to know those. You need to know those words, absolutely. And you got to know which is which, dividend, divisor. It's something you just got to work on. Let's go ahead and go to the next page. All right. Now there's a bunch of problems on here. First of all, let's pause for 1 minute and do these 3 problems on your own. Okay? So hopefully you've already done this. I know the reciprocal are any 2 numbers that can be multiplied together to get 1. And I know the only way to multiply 2 numbers together and get 1 is by, even though we don't use the word flip it over, that is really what you're doing. We just now got to understand that, okay, I got to make sure I'm going to multiply them. Would that give me 1? Yeah. Any number over itself would always give us 1. So the reciprocal of 3/5 is 5/3. Okay. The reciprocal of 1/3, well, again, if you just thought about it like that, but let's just multiply it out just to be sure. Let's multiply it times 3 over 1. That's going to give me 3 over 3, which equals 1. So there we go, 3 over 1. Which, by the way, 3 over 1, what does that equal? That equals 3, obviously. Any number over 1 is just the whole number itself. Just like here, letter C. Hopefully this one didn't trip you up too much. You got to put it in fraction form. And then when you're trying to find the reciprocal of it, you are then going to make it 1/11. Okay? If I multiply those out, top times top, bottom times bottom, give you 11 over 11, which would be the whole number 1. Okay? All right. Now we're going to be dividing. Okay? Now, before we go into this, I'm going to show you one quick multiplication one. Let's say I gave you this, 4 times 6. Of course, you guys all know that the answer to 4 times 6 is definitely 24. Okay? No doubt it's 24. Okay? Now let's think about them as fractions. So let's put them in fractions. So 1, every whole number can become a fraction by putting a 1 underneath of it. Okay? Now, remember, when we multiply fractions, we do top times top, bottom times bottom. So 4 times 6 is 24. 1 times 1 is 1. It's the same thing, right? It's still the answer is 24. Okay, let me do another one. 4 times 2/3. Okay? Again, anytime you ever want to add, subtract, multiply, or divide, mixed numbers or whole numbers, we're going to go ahead and make that into fraction form. Now let's multiply it. 4 over 1, top times top, bottom times bottom. That's going to give me 8/3. Of course, we always want to give our answer in both improper and mixed number form. So I'm going to do 8 divided by 3. 3 goes into 8 2 whole times. Multiply around. Get a remainder of 2. Therefore, I know that this is going to be 2 2/3. That is the answer to 4 times 2/3. So that's the review part of this. Now let's talk about division. Okay? Now, I want everybody at the bottom, down here, I think you should have room. I want you to write this statement. You have to write this. This is going to be another one of these repeat after me things. You guys are going to always have this. When I start to say this sentence, you guys are going to finish it. Just like when I say all fractions are, and you guys say division problems, this is going to be another one. Okay? Here it is. Division is just multiplication division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. Give you a second to finish that up. Okay, division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. Now, that probably doesn't make any sense yet, but it will. I can promise you, you won't think this is hard after you do a few. Okay, so division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. So it goes back to one thing. It goes back to knowing which one is the dividend and which one is the divisor. For the rest of this, I'm going to nominate the dividend. I'm going to highlight it in red. I'm going to do the divisor in green. Okay? So like this first one, the number that's being divided, well, just say it. 4 divided by, well, right there, if this 4 is being divided by that, then I know that this 4/7 must be my divisor, and the 4 must be my dividend. Okay? Now, I'm going to go back. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here so that we can all see this sentence at the same time. I'm going to keep bouncing back and forth here. Okay? Maybe I'll just so I'm going to take this problem. You don't have to do this. You can keep working right up here. I'm just going to rewrite this problem down here. Okay? So it's 4 divided by 4/7. Okay? So we're going back to this statement. Division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. So the first thing that I've told you to do, whether you're dealing with mixed numbers, adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put that in fraction form. So this is going to be done in 2 steps. The first step, I'm going to call this number 1, is we're going to leave it a division problem. We're just going to put them in fraction form. So that's going to become 4/1 divided by 4/7. That just allowed me to put it in fraction form. Okay? Now we're going to go to step 2. Now this is where the real, I'm going to write this word again, algorithm starts. The algorithm is the whole, remember, an algorithm is just a step-by-step process. Okay? So when I talk about algorithm, this is what I'm talking about. That's the first step. Put them in fraction form. Okay? So now we're going to read this very carefully one more time. Division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. Division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. And I'm saying it over and over because I'm trying to get it to maybe something to click in your mind. Okay? I'm going to show you what's going to happen, and then we're going to talk about it. So this is going to stay the same. This is going to become multiplication. And 4/7 is going to become 7/4. Okay, I'm going to give you a second to write that. Okay, now, what we just did is we just did this, what's highlighted in green up here. This is what we did. Let's read it again. Division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. Okay, so all we're doing is making every division problem into a multiplication problem. Okay? That's how we do it. So now it's just multiplication of fractions. All we have to do is top times top, bottom times bottom. 4 times 7 is 28. 1 times 4 is 4. When I go to convert that into a mixed number, I'm going to do 28 divided by 4. I've realized that it'll go in 7 times, and I don't have a remainder. So that means the answer is 7. So what that's telling me is that 4 divided by 4/7 is going to be the answer 7, which might seem really weird right now, because wait a minute, how did I divide and I get an answer larger? Well, we're going to talk more about that. Basically, here's the point of this whole thing. this number right here is representing groups. Okay? When you do, let's say you did, you don't have to write this, 6 divided by 3. I have 6 Skittles. I have 3 groups of Skittle. Since I have 3 groups, I'm going to have less than 6 Skittles in each group, right? So when you have a group that's less than 1, my group size is actually less than 1, there's going to be more of those 4/7 that'll go into 4. Now that probably just blew your mind. But hopefully as we go through this more and more, you're going to see that it's going to make a lot more sense. Whenever your divisor is less than 1, you will actually get an answer bigger than what you started with, which is kind of mind-blowing. Okay, so let's go back up here. We'll do another one now. We'll go to this one here. So now we got 6 divided by 2/7. Again, I want you to do your work up here. I'm just going to move it down here just so that I can look at that sentence at the same time. So this is number 2. 6 divided by 2/7. Let's follow that algorithm now. Okay, step number 1, put them in fraction form. So I'm going to make that 6/1 divided by 2/7. Right? Now we're on step 2. This is the real meat of the whole thing here. Because we're going to say division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. So the dividend is going to stay exactly the same. First number is the dividend. Division is just multiplication, so we're going to change it to a multiplication problem. And then we're going to do the multiply by the divisor. This is the divisor right here, right? The divisor's reciprocal. So then we're going to flip it over again. Just a quick reminder. Those have to be reciprocals of each other because when you multiply them, it's the only way you can get a product of 1. Okay? So we're going to multiply that by 7/2. So division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. The dividend stays the same. So now we're going to do top times top, bottom times bottom, and that's going to give me 42/2. Okay? 42 divided by 2. 2 goes into 4 2 times. Multiply around. Bring down your 2. 2 goes into 2 1 time. Again, we do not have a partial. We don't have a remainder at all. We know that the answer would be 21. Again, kind of mind-blowing because you started with 6. How could I start with 6, divide something, and get something larger? Again, because your group size is actually less than 1. Okay? Everybody got that? Probably not, but we will get to it. Let's go up and do a couple more here. All right? 2 divided by 5/3. Okay, let's do the 2 steps. Step number 1, put them both in fraction form. And by the way, some of you are going to want to skip steps when you do this. Okay, you're going to do it. You're going to want to just, no, look how I'm doing it. You're going to do a 1 and a 2. Every time, this is the way I want it done. Okay? Now, we know that division is just, dividend stays the same. That never changes. Okay? And then we know that division is just multiplication, that changes to multiplication, by the divisor's reciprocal, which I know is 3/5. And then from there, it is just top times top, bottom times bottom. I get 6/5. Do your division. 1 and 1/5. Okay? Hopefully we're kind of getting a trend here. 1/3 divided by 8. Okay? So we're going to do it in 2 steps, obviously. So we put them both in fraction form. We leave it as a division problem. So make that 8/1. Now we're going to go ahead and do the algorithm. So the dividend stays the same. Division is going to become multiplication. And the reciprocal of 8/1 is 1/8. That is going to be top times top. Bottom times bottom would give me 1/24. Okay? We're seeing how this goes. I would like everybody in the room, I want to pause, and I want everybody to do this one right here. So we skipped a couple, but go ahead and jump to that one right there. Okay? So we go to this one. Now, again, you should all have on your paper a number 1 and a number 2 because they're not in fraction form. Okay? That's the first step we always take. And I don't mean doing it like that. I want you to rewrite it. Okay, so that's going to become 8 over 1 divided by 4 over 7. Okay, then we're going to do that little sentence right there. Division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. 7 over 4. Okay, that's going to give us 56 over 4. Okay, now we're ready to divide. 4 goes into 5 one time. Multiply it around. 1 times 4. Subtracting it 1, bring down a 6. 4 goes into 16 4 times. Up. Again, we did not get a remainder, so that answer would be 14. Notice how neat I'm doing this every time. I am doing 1 step, 2 steps. Okay? Let's go to the next page. Okay? Now we have fractions. They're already in fraction form here, guys. They're already put in fraction form for you. In the previous page, we had to consistently put them in fraction form. So when they're already in fraction form, and when I say fraction form, I mean one number over another number. That's fraction form. Okay? These on this page weren't in fraction form. 6 is not in fraction form. 6 is not in fraction form. 2 is not in fraction form. Okay? When we have it already in fraction form for us, we actually only have to do 1 step for this type of situation. And again, division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. So the dividend, the number being divided, right there, that is our dividend. That is our dividend right there. That is the number that's being divided. This right here is our divisor. Okay? Again, we're going to have to do a Quizlet probably and get you guys to memorize those because, you know, there's a difference between learning and memorizing, and math is mostly learning. But there are a few things like this that you just have to know. You have to know which one the dividend and divisor is. Okay? So we know that division is just. It's not division. It becomes multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal, which is going to make that 10/3. And that's going to be 20 over 15. Then we're ready to divide this. 20 divided by 15, that goes in 1 time. Multiply that around. You get 5. You get 1 and 5/15. Now, we haven't mentioned this too much, and I probably should be, so we're going to do that now. We've really got to get in a good habit of always putting numbers in simplest form. Okay? So we know that this equaled 1 and 5/15. Okay? Now, when you're simplifying, it doesn't matter whether you're simplifying something like this or if it has a number in front. The process doesn't change. Okay? The process we're going to do is we're going to ask, just like we did in Chapter 1, we're going to say, are both numbers even or odd? Because like in the case of this 4/10, they're both even. So we should all be able to say, oh, well, I could just divide them both by 2 then. And then that would put it in simplest form for me. But when you go down here, I see that at least one of them is odd. And if one of them is odd, what factors do you think I need to check? 3, 5, and 7, just like we always have. Okay? So 3, clearly not a factor of 5. 5, yep, they both end in 5. So right there, I just learned that both of these numbers are divisible by 5. You don't lose the 1, that remains. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So there it is, 1 and 3, 1 and 1/3. Okay? This will be step number, again, only 1 step needed, guys, because these are already in fraction form, and we know that division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. Now on this one, I want to show you something. This only works for multiplication. I haven't showed you this. You probably maybe remember it from 5th grade. So this is something called cross simplifying. I hope you're all writing this. This is something that's really going to help you guys. Okay, I think it's a lot easier to use cross simplifying. It's something that you're going to hear me say a lot. Now, cross simplifying can only be used when it's multiplying, when you're multiplying. It can't be used for division, can't be used for adding or subtracting, just multiplying. Okay, and what it is basically you look diagonally, because you look crossways. So you're going to look like this, and then you're going to look like across here like this. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to figure out a factor that they have in common. For instance, what factor does 3 and 3 share? Okay, hopefully you're all saying, well, 3 has factors of 1 and 3. 3 has factors of 1 and 3. So the largest factor they share is 3. So basically, when you cross simplify, you are going to divide each of those diagonal numbers by 3 because they share that as a factor. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Okay? 4 and 16, think about what factors they share. They share a 2 because they're even, but they share a 4. So if you divide both those numbers by 4, 4 divided by 4 is 1. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Then you're ready to go. Now you got a whole new fraction, right? You got this, basically, you just made it become 1 over 1 times 4 over 1, which we know is just 1 times 4. Okay? So that would be 4. Okay? Now going back here, I'll just show you real quick that it wouldn't matter. Let's say we didn't do that cross-simplifying. Well, actually, yeah, I'll just leave it like, I'll take this off. So let's say I left it as 3/4 times 16/3. You do top times top, bottom times bottom, you end up getting 48 over 12. When you do your division, 12 goes into 48 4 whole times. We do not have a remainder. That's what we said the answer was. So my thing is, would you rather cross-simplify with numbers like 4 and 16 and 3 and 3, or would you have to want to worry about simplifying 48 over 12, okay? Just the cross-simplifying is intended to help you, so let's do another. Okay? So this would be a one-stepper. Again, it's only one step because it is already in fraction form. So division is just, that number stays the same, multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. Okay? Now first I'll do it without cross-simplifying. So we'll just do top times top and bottom times bottom. That would give me 45 over 15. When you divide this out, you would learn that it would go in 3 times. And we know the answer is 3. Okay? But if you would have used cross-simplifying, you would have been able to go, okay, cool. So I see that 3 and 3 both have a factor of 3, so I can divide each of those by 3. And 5 and 15 both are divisible by 5, so I'm going to divide 5 by 5 and 15 by 5. And then we do top times top, bottom times bottom, we get 3 over 1, which equals 3. Same thing we said it had to equal. Okay? I would like everybody in the room right now to try this one. Okay? So again, step number 1, we have a fraction there. It's already in fraction form, so we have 2/3. Division becomes multiplication, and the reciprocal of 10/13 is 13 over 10. Now you could check for cross-simplifying here in this multiplication step. 3 and 13, they don't have anything in common except for 1. Now 2 and 10, those are both even, so we know they're both divisible by 2. So we're going to make that a 1, make that a 5. I just divided both those numbers by 2. Now I'm going to do 13 over 15. Since one of those numbers is odd, I'm going to check 3, 5, and 7. Okay. 13 does not have a factor of 3, 5, or 7 because it's prime. Therefore, that is in simplest form. Everybody got that? All right. Now, let's jump down here to the bottom. Now, there's an example for you. You can check that out. Now, we're going to talk about dividing mixed numbers. Now, are those in fraction form? No, they are not. This one is. That one's in fraction form. This one's a mixed number. When I say fraction form, I only want one number over another number. So this is going to be one that's going to involve 2 steps. 2 steps are happening. And the first one is to go around the barn because, as you guys know, it doesn't matter whether we add, subtract, multiply, or divide. We are always going to turn them to impropers. So we multiply and then add. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15 fourths. Leave it a division problem. We are not changing. We're not doing the sentence. Division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. We are just simply putting them into fraction form. We are leaving everything the same except for we're getting rid of the mixed numbers or the whole numbers. Okay. Now in step 2 is when we're going to do that algorithm. Division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. And the reciprocal of 4/5 is 5/4. Now that we're in the multiplication step, guys, remember we can check for cross-simplifying if you want. Okay, I would want you to. 4 and 15, Nope, they don't have any factors in common except for 1. Neither does 4 and 5. So this one, there wasn't any cross simplifying. So you were just going to do top times top, bottom times bottom. We're going to get 75 over 16. One that you're just going to have to go and do the math on. 16 goes into 75. You might have to do some guess and check methods here. I think it's going to be maybe 5. We could try it. Okay, that gave me 80, so that clearly ain't going to work, right? Because that's bigger than 75. Since I'm really close to 75, what that told me is that, oh, okay, so that means that it'll go in at most 4 times, and then you multiply around, that's going to give me 64, then we subtract and get 11. So 4 and 11/16 is what that equals. And that is in simplest form, again, because I know that 11 is prime and only has a factor of 11 and 1. 16 does not have a factor of 11. Okay? Let's go to the next page. All right. This one here, number 3 here. Again, make sure your first thing you're doing is making it into 2 steps. Okay, first thing we got to do is go around the barn on these things. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 would be 11 over 2. Leave it a division problem. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5 over 2. Leave it the same, except for the fact that you are doing a division problem. And then now we're ready to do that algorithm when we know that division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. Okay, so that's going to become 2/5. Now let's check for some cross simplifying. Is there any numbers that 2 and 2 have in common that they could be divided by? Hopefully you're all seeing that. If the number is ever the same diagonally, you know you can divide it by itself, which would make them both 1. Okay, now we're ready to do top times top, bottom times bottom. 11 times 1 is 11. 1 times 5 is 5. 11 divided by 5 would give me 2 and 1/5. So we know that's our answer there. Okay? All right, let's, I would like you guys to take a moment, and I want you to try this one right here. Okay? Now that everybody's done it, step number 1 is going to be to put them in a fraction form, so we're going to leave it as a division problem. You have to do it this way or you will get it wrong. We go around the barn here. That's going to give me 19 over 8. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 3 is 19. Divided by 1/4, that one was already in fraction form. Now we're going to go ahead and do step 2, which is the dividend is going to stay the same, division is going to become multiplication, and the reciprocal of 1/4 is 4 over 1. Now we're at this step, we can do what again? CS, cross simplify. Okay, 19 and 1, clearly nothing, 1 is the only factor of 1, so that's not going to help us. But 8 and 4, what do they share a common factor of? Hopefully you're all saying 4. So I'm going to divide both of those by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Top times top, 19 times 1 is 19. 2 times 1 is 2. Now we're ready to do the division. 19 divided by 2 would give us 9 and 1/2 is your answer. Okay? We'll do one more here. Okay, again, 2 steps need to be happening. So we go around the barn here. That's going to give me 45/8. Right, guys? 8 times 5 is 40. Plus 5 is 45. We're going to leave it as a division problem. And then 3/4 is already in fraction form. So then all we have to do to finish up here is we have to do the algorithm. That's when we know that division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal. The reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3. At this stage, we can do our cross simplifying. There we got 8 and 4 again. So we can divide both those by 4. Okay? 3 and 45, you might not know this. And even if you didn't know it, it's fine. But I know that 3 and 45 both have a factor of 3. 4 plus 5 is 9. So I'm going to divide by 3 here. I'm going to divide by 3 here. I just got 15 over 2, which would become 7 and 1/2. 7 and 1/2 as a mixed number. Both equal there. Both the exact same thing. Okay? There's some more practice here. You guys can feel free to finish those as needed. Good practice problems that we're not going to get to. But as you can see, the biggest thing is if they're in fraction form, such as these ones were. You only have to do one step. It's really, we should call it number 2, because that's really the multiplication step. Okay, when you have mixed numbers or whole numbers, you got to show me 2 steps. They have to be put in fraction form, and then they need to be turned into the multiplication problem. So biggest thing, just remember, division is just multiplication by the divisor's reciprocal.